President Trump gave a more forceful denunciation of white supremacy yesterday after the media lit into him over his weak initial response to the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, where he basically said, there's a hate and bigotry and there's violence on both sides, on many sides. So people were like, oh, whoa, did you just both sides a literal white supremacist gathering? And so everybody kind of lit into him over that. So, 2 days later now, he's like, oh, no, I'm going to do a do-over. Can I get a mulligan? I want a mulligan on this one. And then he went out and gave a more forceful denunciation. So let's watch, and then we'll discuss.
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. We are a nation founded on the truth that all of us are created equal. We are equal in the eyes of our Creator. We are equal under the law, and we are equal under our Constitution. Those who spread violence in the name of bigotry strike at the very core of America. 2 days ago, a young American woman, Heather Heyer, was tragically killed. Her death fills us with grief, and we send her family our thoughts, our prayers, and our love.
So a lot of people are like, I mean, come on, man, this was 2 days late, so you're not going to get credit for getting over that low bar. Look, keeping it real, I think this is a situation of now people say, damned if he does, damned if he doesn't, because when he doesn't do the denunciation the right way the first time, everybody gets outraged. I was outraged when I listened to the first response. Because the first response, yeah, he both sided a white supremacist rally. That's not when you do it. Now, it is true, and I've spoken about it back, there were the anti-fascist Milo riots, in which case I 100% denounce that. That's authoritarian left violence. So it's fair to point that out and say, hey, that's not cool. But in this case, it wasn't an instance of like, hey, there's equal violence on both sides. It was a case of literal white supremacists and neo-Nazis, KKK, neo-Confederates gathering. They were the ones being violent, and the counter-protesters were totally peaceful, and he did a both sides thing. So I didn't like that initial response. Now, okay, yeah, it's 2 days later. But that is a good, like, okay, KKK, neo-Nazis are bad, racism, horrible, all that stuff. So, okay, fair enough. That's a good response. You probably should have given that one initially. Maybe. Yeah, definitely should have done that. But giving him credit for this response, but this is the problem. Take a look at this. This is from May 3rd. Donald Trump freezes funding to groups fighting right-wing terror and white supremacism. So $10 million he froze that was going to this cause. There's nobody investigating right-wing extremism now. It's all geared towards Islamic extremism. So this speech was good. The rhetoric in this speech was good. But the point is the policies need to match up with the rhetoric in this speech. And the policies need to treat right-wing terrorism as being a threat, at least to an extent, and we're not doing that. The government is not doing that. Understand that as a raw number, there are more white supremacist right-wing terror attacks in the U.S. than there are Islamic terror attacks. Now, granted, that fact is a little misleading because the percentage of Muslims in the U.S. is so low anyway. It's like, maybe 1% of the population. So there's still an overrepresentation of Islamic terror attacks in the U.S., given how many Muslims there are in the U.S. So you need to point that out for clarity's sake and to give all the context. But the fact that there are more right-wing terror attacks and there's nobody looking into that, no, that's inexcusable. And by the way, it wasn't just Trump. Obama kind of caved to the Republican bullshit on this too. What's funny is the Republicans screamed in, I think it was 2009, about how, oh my God, it's so politicized. That fucking, what was it, an FBI report that said there are more right-wing terror attacks than Muslim terror attacks? They screamed about how politicized that was, and they said, we demand that you spend more money to combat combat Islamic terrorism than right-wing terrorism. And Obama said, fine. And so I think he had one person working on right-wing extremism in the U.S., and everybody else geared towards fighting Islamic extremism. So what's so funny is that as the Republicans say, oh my God, the left is politicizing this. No, that's exactly what you're fucking doing. You're the ones who are politicizing it, saying, I have a feeling, I have my own politicized beliefs here that we should focus more on Islamic extremism and put all of our resources there, and we shouldn't do right-wing terrorism, so I'm going to make you do that. And then meanwhile, again, the numbers show that's not the case. And so they politicized it and said, no more funding for right-wing extremism, but put it all towards Islamic extremism. Obama caved, but at least Obama had somebody working on right-wing extremism. Now there's nobody. So this is just, it's just sad. And then, of course, you know, people have pointed out, you're talking about a guy Trump, who on the campaign trail said, you know, the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, the Mexicans, they're criminals, they're rapists. I assume some are good people. This is a guy who called for nationwide stop and frisk, even though the numbers on it and the studies on it have shown it overwhelmingly disproportionately targets minorities and, like, doesn't yield anything 99% of the time. So you're just taking away the Fourth Amendment rights, the protection from unreasonable search and seizure from minorities, for nothing. And he's like, yeah, we need a nationwide system like that. Of course, he's the guy who said ban all Muslims from coming into the U.S. and tried to implement a different version of the religious ban. He tried to do it in an immigration way and picked poor Muslim countries to do it because obviously the rich ones, you know, were allies with the likes of Saudi Arabia. So you leave it open to them, even though they're arguably the biggest threat. So he's a guy whose policies, yes, have been fairly bigoted, if not just stupid. And now he gets to come out and say, oh yeah, this white supremacy is bad and bigotry and hate is bad and don't look at my policies, but that's bad. And then again, nobody looking into white supremacist terrorism. Shouldn't this be a little bit of a wake-up call? And by the way, we're going to get us to a story later on in the show of a foiled right-wing terror plot that nobody's really talking about. It's online in various outlets and print outlets, but nobody's really talking about it in the media. So, I mean, point is, you need to have the policies match up with the rhetoric, and his speech here and his rhetoric here was good, but you have to have, you know, the funding in the right places to make sure that you treat this as a threat, because it clearly is a threat.